Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at John chapter 9 and First Samuel chapters 22 to 23. In the last video, we started off with John chapter 9, and we're going to go further down in that chapter today. It was a story where Jesus had healed a man that was blind, and he had gone around telling people Jesus healed him. And then there were some Pharisees. In verse 16 of John chapter 9, it says, some of the Pharisees said, this man Jesus is not from God, for he's walking on the Sabbath. Others said, but how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs? So there was a deep division of opinion among them. It just occurred to me, these Pharisees, they were more concerned about keeping the law. There was no love in them. They weren't, even bothered with the fact that someone who had been blind from birth had just been healed. A grown man who had been blind from birth had just been healed. That was, for them, they couldn't be bothered. They were not bothered before, and they couldn't even be bothered now that the man was healed. And they were just concerned about the Sabbath. How could Jesus heal on the Sabbath? You know, and even in this day and age, there are still so many of us who still act like Pharisees. We see people in terrible situations, but we're more concerned about keeping the law than about setting people free from unhealthy situations, from terrible situations, from abusive situations. People are in abusive marriages, for instance, but you're telling them, oh, they have to stay there because they're married. That's an example, of this, what these Pharisees were doing. Like, how could you heal him on the Sabbath? Like, for goodness sake, this guy has just been healed. Can you even, take a minute to celebrate with him and rejoice with him? You're more concerned about keeping the law than about having genuine love in your heart for a fellow human being, for goodness sake. And that's something we have to be careful about, that we're not just about the law, but love is number one. Love rules in our heart before any law. And then, they go on asking, this man, is he from God? They were asking this blind man. The man is like, see, I don't know whether he's a sinner, but all I know is I was blind and now I can see. This is, people only care about results at the end of the day. They don't care about your theology or your plenty grammar or your many laws and regulations. They want to see that you care. Show that you care. Show the power of God. Results is the end of argument. So it's good to seek knowledge and be well versed and all of this and have all this, Greek, Hebrew, and all of that. But we have to make sure we are able to deliver results. We are producing results that validates the faith that we confess. And, so then in verse 28, they go on to curse him and say, you're a disciple, you're just one of his disciples. And the guy's like, why? That's very strange. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where it comes from. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. Results speak for themselves. Result is the end of argument. This man got the result and he believed. Because in verse 35, when Jesus came to him, he's like, just asked him, do you believe in the Son of Man? And in 38, he says, yes, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped Jesus. Miracles are the fastest way to get people born again, to get people saved, to get people coming to Christ. Miracles, signs, and wonders. We cannot neglect the power of God to convict sinners and bring them, bring them to Christ.